Today, we are focused on one of the most difficult things a clinician has to do: deliver high-stakes medical news in a trauma setting.
Right. And our mission here is to extract the absolute core principles for doing this well.
Because just improvising in those moments is not an option.
Definitely not. Serious conversations, especially in trauma, they demand structure. There's a tool for this, a framework called the ABCDEs of Trauma Communication.
The ABCDEs. So it's a very clinical-sounding approach. What is this framework really designed to achieve for the provider on the ground?
It's a roadmap. It really is. It guides clinicians, so they're not just winging it during, what might be the worst moment of a family's life.
So it guides them through the whole process.
Exactly. From preparing for the talk to actually having it and then to processing the emotional fallout afterwards.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. A, in the middle of all that chaos, how do you even begin?
A is absolutely foundational. It stands for acquaint yourself with the family and ask.
Acquaint and ask.
Right. You just can't start delivering news until you have a baseline. You need to know who you're talking to.
So the main goal is just listening first. Why is it so important to know what the family understands before you even say anything about the patient?
Well, think about it. If you start your explanation at level 10 and they're still at level 2, you've lost them.
Right. They're not even hearing you.
Not at all.
Yeah.
This step, this A, it prevents you from repeating things they already know. And, maybe more importantly, it helps you spot any misunderstandings right from the start.
So what's the question? What's the specific thing you ask to get that ball rolling?
It's a simple, open-ended question. What have you been told about what has been going on? It's non-judgmental. It just invites them to share where they're at, and that sets the entire stage for what follows.
Yeah.
So once you have their perspective, you move straight to B.
Okay.
Which is begin with a warning. And I want to be clear, this is not optional. It is absolutely mandatory.
Mandatory? Why? I mean, I can see some providers wanting to just get to the clinical facts.
Because that warning is the psychological pivot point. It's a signal. It tells the listener, pay attention, this is not a routine update. It prepares them emotionally for the weight of what you're about to say.
So this requires a lot of intention from the clinician. How do you approach that moment?
You have to be deliberate. You need total forthrightness, empathy, and transparency. This is not the time to soften things or hide behind jargon.
And in a busy, chaotic emergency department, you often don't have any prior relationship with this family. How does that warning help manage the tone?
It sets the tone instantly. It transitions the conversation from, say, just a general update to life-altering news.
Without that clear shift, they could miss the gravity of what you're saying.
They absolutely could.
So what's the phrase? What's the standard, unambiguous language to use?
Keep it simple and declarative. I have serious news to share with you.
And right after that warning, you deliver the substance, the headline statement, right? How is that built?
The headline has to have two parts. First is the fact, the objective clinical detail.
Okay, the fact.
And second is the meaning. What's the expected impact of that fact on the patient? Fact plus meaning.
Let's talk about clarity. So many people, their instinct is to soften bad news, to use euphemisms to ease the blow a little. Is that ever okay?
No, never. Clarity is everything.
Yeah.
Any attempt to soften the news, even if it's well-intentioned, just creates confusion. And that confusion can quickly become mistrust. You have to say the truth, plainly. No medical jargon.
Can you give us a concrete example, the warning, followed by that clear fact and meaning statement for a really serious but non-fatal injury?
Of course. After you say, I have serious news to share, you might say, your daughter has had an injury to her spinal cord in the neck. That's the fact.
Okay.
Which is interfering with her breathing. That's the meaning. We're going to have to put a tube in her throat to help her breathe.
Warning, fact, meaning. It leaves no room for doubt about what's happening.
None.
How does this apply when the news is the worst news? When you're communicating a death?
That is when clarity is most critical. The warning comes first. Then a very brief narrative of what happened.
And then
you must use explicit words. You have to use the word died or dead.
not passed away or we lost them.
Absolutely not. Those phrases, those euphemisms, they can actually prevent the family from processing the reality of the situation. It feels harsh, but it's essential.
All right, now we get to C. You've delivered that devastating headline. How do you summarize the situation without just overwhelming them?
C is for concise summary. And the most important word there is concise. You have to practice restraint.
Meaning you only focus on the absolute most important thing?
The most serious life-limiting diagnosis. You only give the fact and meaning for that one thing.
I can imagine clinicians wanting to give every detail they know. What's the risk of doing that?
The risk is total cognitive overload. Their emotional brain has taken over completely. They are not retaining details.
So if you start listing every injury, every lab value,
They'll miss the main point, the one thing they actually need to hear. So you have to avoid that catalog of injuries, stick to the main problem, and again, zero medical jargon.
okay, so after that very focused, concise summary, we go to D. What happens then?
D is do use silence.
Silence.
Yes. And the length is specific. You must pause for 10 to 15 seconds.
10 to 15 seconds. I mean, in that room with that family, that must feel like an absolute eternity.
It does. It feels incredibly uncomfortable. But that time is non-negotiable. It's processing time. It gives the family the cognitive and emotional space they need to begin to react.
And the most common mistake is
Speaking too soon. Jumping in to fill that silence. We all have an urge to rescue the conversation from the awkwardness, but you have to resist it. You just have to be present.
we've delivered the news, we've held that silence. We're now at the final stage. I. What does that cover?
E is actually three things. It's encourage and validate emotions, elicit and answer questions, and finally, end the encounter with clarity.
Okay, that first part, validating emotions. That can be the hardest part for providers. Is there a tool for navigating that?
There is.
Yeah.
This is where we use the NRSE framework. It gives you a structured way to respond to that emotional chaos.
NRSE. Let's break that down quickly. What are the steps?
Okay, so N is name the emotion you're seeing. I can see that you're very angry right now.
Yeah.
U is understand. You acknowledge their feelings. Anyone in this situation would feel that way.
R is for respect.
Right. You validate their strength. I respect how hard this is for you. S is for support. Offer practical help.
And the final E.
E is explore. You ask what they need or what they're most worried about right now. It helps move toward next steps that are based on their needs.
So after you've used NRSE, you've answered their questions. How do you wrap up such an intense conversation?
You have to end with closure and a clear path forward. You summarize what was discussed, and you confirm the plan for the next hour or the next day. Clarity is key, right up until the moment you leave the room.
So we've gone through the whole ABCDE system. When you look at it as a complete package, what's the fundamental benefit of using a framework like this in such a chaotic setting?
It forces organization onto a completely disorganized, stressful event. I mean, it mirrors the same systematic approach we insist on for medical procedures.
That makes sense.
By structuring these conversations, the framework ensures we are forthright, we minimize miscommunication, and we uphold the absolute highest standard of care.
The structural rigor is key. So as we close, considering the power of that 10 to 15 second silence in stage D, that critical time for processing overwhelming news, we want you to think about this.
Where else in your clinical practice could intentional silence, maybe even just a structured 3-second pause, dramatically improve how a patient or family understands other serious information?
That intentional space for listening, it can change everything.